But then once I start explaining it to other people, like you and my roommates and my friends, they're like, Julia, you were part of a cult.
Yeah. Well, cult people inside of a cult, they don't call themselves cult
No,
members.
we don't. Yeah, exactly. I never saw it as a cult.
Yeah.
It's only when other people look at it from the outside, they're like, yeah, that was a cult.
Or you could join a cult.
Or
That's
that,
another option. And
hey,
you can,
apparently I was a part of a
yeah,
cult.
you can. What's up, everyone?
Welcome back to Breaking the Grid, the podcast where we talk about off-grid living, self-sufficiency, and life without society. Last episode, we talked about preparing to leave society. We talked about making a plan, your needs and your wants, acquiring skills through whatever ways possible, and finances. That was a big one. Today is part 2 of that episode. We are going to pick Dan's brain a little bit more about what he did, the rest of the things that he did leading up to him actually leaving society, and what you can do, what you can learn from him, all the things that he did right and wrong, and you can pick and choose what you want to do when you leave society. Again, this applies to just more than leaving society as a whole. It can be something as simple as just wanting to be more self-sufficient and less reliant on society.
Which we
So,
know now that is a definite must.
yeah, it is.
Before COVID, only the most craziest people were separating and homesteading and prepping. Now with COVID, everybody knows that anything could happen at any time.
When COVID happened, a lot of people were starting to make their own food. Like bread making boomed in popularity. It was so random. And this year, it's all about eggs. Like
It's all
everyone's
about
getting,
eggs.
yes.
That's the motto for this year. It's all about eggs.
It is. Eggflation was a huge thing, and every single person I know and their mothers have gotten chickens to lay eggs so they don't have to go to the store and buy the inflated price of eggs. So we're seeing the society shift more and more towards self-sufficiency and relying less on the systems that society has created. So yeah, if you want to learn about that kind of stuff, this is the podcast for you.
Absolutely. And
So
just a note, I didn't know about COVID until about a year into it. I had no idea about it at all until pretty much when I met her. I didn't even know that COVID was a thing. I don't have news. I don't have social media. I don't own a phone. So I had no contact knowledge of it,
mhm.
which attests to this work.
Mhm.
This stuff that we're teaching here and telling you about works because we do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's get into it.
Cool. Okay, so continuing off from last episode, we are going to talk about the research stage. So, research, research, research. We talked about acquiring skills, which is a little bit different than the research stage. Can you explain the difference?
Well,
Or is it just a continuation of
no,
acquiring skills?
we can research land. We can research rainfall for the year in inches. We can research wind and how many days of sun it has. Those aren't acquiring any skills. That's just
Mm,
letting us know that since we want to do solar power, we want a place that has at least 250 days a year of sunshine. And
mhm.
acquiring skills is more like, I need to learn how to use power tools and I need to learn how to weld. And
Gotcha.
so,
Okay. So, what sort of research did you do before you left society?
how many days of sunshine, how many days of wind, water, rainwater. We researched growing seasons, which zone you're in. We researched price of the land, what the taxes were for the land, because we weren't going to pay taxes every year. So we had to pay off the tax life of the land. We researched the population of that land.
What location did you do your research on?
Okay, so we searched New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Colorado. We looked at Alaska because I had researched, and at the time, Alaska was still homesteading.
Mm,
So you could go out there and get free land if you met some stipulations. Of course, we looked all over Mexico because she's from Mexico,
mhm.
South America.
Wow. So extensive research. It wasn't oh, I want to live in the desert. Boom, I'm going to go live in the desert. It was how long did it take you to do all of this research?
I mean, we were doing other things at the time, like I was learning the skills and I was being an assistant to a mason and learning concrete or
Mm.
welding or mechanics. But as we could get out and go places, we were throughout a year period.
Okay, I see, I see. So researching is alongside all the other things you were doing. So while you were budgeting, while you were acquiring skills, you were also doing research.
Yeah. It
Okay.
all kind of overlapped on top of each other.
Okay, gotcha. So there's about 4 or 5 different kinds of terrains and biodomes. Is that what they're called?
Yeah. But biosystems, ecosystems.
Can you sort of give us the pros and cons to some of those?
Okay. So you have mountainous, desert, rainforest, or tropical. Then you have where it's just snow all the time. And then you have the beach, which can be desert beach or tropical beach.
Mhm.
And some of the pros and cons were up in the mountains, we have to deal with a snow season. Pretty much you're not doing anything for 6 months out of the year.
Mm.
You're just snowed in and you're lucky if you can keep livestock, grow plants. So that one was kind of off the table. Land up in Alaska was nice, but we had to have at least a short period of time to gather supplies. And there's just nothing out there.
Yeah.
We looked into the jungle and tropical places, which were good, but the humidity was a killer.
Mhm.
I mean, it's 100% humidity every day, and you're just sweating. All your clothes are always wet.
Mm.
Everything's always wet, moldy. And then we finally settled in the desert, but we were in the high desert, which is the low desert. It's, 110 degrees all year round. The high desert, it would get up to late, high 90s, maybe. We might have some 100-degree days. Most days were 80s, and our winters
Wow.
were 60. There was a lot of other downsides to that, but the temperature was a big one.
Yeah, when I hear about people living off grid, I don't hear too often people going into the snow. A lot of times it's people going into a tropical forest where things just grow very easily out there. Like I hear a lot of people going to Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, and Alaska. A lot of people go to Alaska. Why do you think those are the most? Oh, and Costa Rica. I
Costa
hear,
Rica is beautiful,
yeah,
and Venezuela too.
yeah, a lot of people, if they're gonna leave the US to go off grid, I often hear a lot of them talk about Costa Rica.
Costa Rica and Venezuela, because they're kind of a drier, they're not as much as rainforest. So, and it's a little cooler. Same with southern Argentina.
Mhm.
So you get that tropical benefits,
Mm,
but you're not getting the rain all the time.
mm,
And right now, like everybody, if anybody's thinking about moving to Central South America, Venezuela, the land in Venezuela is like dirt cheap because of all the unrest and there's government and their economic system collapsed
mm.
and there's lawlessness. And now it's coming back around, but
Yeah, and I guess that should also be a field of research that you look into, right?
right.
What their politics are, what the laws and rules are,
What the safety of
the
it,
safety
the
aspect.
the if you're gonna still be going to hospitals, the medical system.
Mm,
If it was the medical system, I'd choose Cuba at this point
mm,
because Cuba has one of the best medical systems in the world. If it's you're into nature, Costa Rica, Venezuela.
mm.
If it's temperature, you want a cooler place, Montana, Canada.
Gotcha.
Like back in the 70s and 60s, everybody was going to Montana because the land was so dirt cheap.
Mhm. Right. So if say for example someone wanted to go abroad to start their off-grid living journey, how would you go about doing that? Cuz you have to, get a passport, a visa, become a citizen, all that there's extra steps to that. So I guess that's why a lot of times I hear people going to Tennessee and Alabama and Georgia as opposed to Argentina or something.
Well, first off, I would say leaving the United States, if you want to get away from society, you have to leave the United States. In the United States, there isn't anywhere anymore that you can go and get away from society.
Not even where you went, West Texas?
No.
It's populated now? With
It's
laws and
populated now. The law is down there.
oh,
There's
wow.
utilities, and they won't let you leave society in the United States.
Oh, okay.
Not completely.
That's a little ominous.
Yeah. I'll get into that more. Yeah. So in the United States, if you want to fully leave society, it's really not an option anywhere anymore.
Mm,
So if you really want to leave, you have to look at countries like India and Africa, anywhere in Africa or South America, because their systems are a lot more lenient and you can be away from society and they're not going to stop you. So how do you get into these countries? Like you said, you have to have a passport. Some countries require you have a visa, some not. A lot of the time, expats go to these countries, both Canadian and American expats go to these countries and just come out every year or every other year. So your visa is
oh,
like for a year or 6 months or 2 years.
yeah.
And they just come out and go to, let's say you're in Guatemala, you come out and go to Mexico and go back in. And then you get a stamp for another year on your visa. And they do that for 20, 50 years. The whole
Oh,
time they just go out for the weekend and then come back.
oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's one way to do it.
And then if you want to become a citizen, there's really two ways to do it. One is to buy your way in. So basically, there'll be a fee of like $10,000 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to maintain a certain amount of money in your bank account.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to always have 20,000 in your bank account. That kind of makes sure that these people aren't just going there and being bums and being a drain on the system, that they're
Mm,
actually contributing financially to the country.
I see.
The other one is to do what I did, which was marry someone from that country,
Yeah.
and then automatically you get your citizen. Not automatically, you still have to go through all the citizenship
Right.
steps, but
It makes it a little easier.
yeah, you'll be approved. The other thing with that is that in a lot of these countries, you're not allowed, a foreigner isn't allowed to own land. So you either have to rent land from a citizen of that country, or if you marry someone that is a citizen of that country, she or he can have the land in their name.
Mm,
Some of the countries, though, like Haiti and a lot of the Caribbean countries, they'll let you buy land. They want you to buy land. A lot of these countries have big coffee fields and big commerce, so that they usually buy land and start growing coffee and live off
mm.
that. Uh,
Okay, I see. I also want to emphasize there's a difference between lab research and field research, which I think you did a lot of both. Lab research is in a controlled environment where you can repeat the experiment over and over again. And field research is a little bit more spontaneous. You are boots on the ground, interacting with the people, interacting with the elements. And you did that when you went out to West Texas. You scouted out for land, experienced the weather, and took all of that in. We would recommend that everyone does that if you're looking into a certain kind of ecosystem. Go out there and experience it, see how you feel about it. Go out there at the best, the peak of the best season, and go out there at the worst of the season and sort of feel it out. See if you can endure both sides of those elements.
yeah, and then when we went there and did those things, we collected samples that we would later send off to UT or do soil sample
Oh,
tests,
pH samples and
pH, consistency of sands, silt, clay, to know how much clay we had in the ground, how much
oh,
sand we had in the ground. We took wind measurements.
yeah.
Um, although now all that stuff's online, like
Oh,
it'll
yeah.
tell you every location, their average wind for the year. And we did drainage tests for plants
I
that
see.
need different drainage requirements. So
Right.
yeah, we took a lot of tests and then took them back and did your lab
Oh, I see.
stuff from there, send them off to get them done.
Okay. Speaking of plants and crops and whatnot, you did a lot of research into that beforehand, or did you have to do the research once you're out there? Can I just sit at a computer and say, oh, peas will grow here? Or how do you approach
Yeah, if you're
that?
still connected to the grid, I mean, if you're still connected through internet or phone or whatnot, then yeah, you can do all your research you want out there. The problem is you're living in worse conditions than you were before.
Mm-hmm.
typically without air conditioning or heating, and you're trying to do all this work now.
Mhm.
And it's not the time to be doing research. It's the time to be implementing
Right.
the plans that were designed from that
From the
research.
research,
So if
right.
you're doing everything out there, if you're just one of these people, and most of us are like this, like, I just want to leave society. I want to go now. I'm out. I'm packing
Yeah.
my van and we're going. Then it's going to be a lot rougher road. You're
Yeah.
making it harder for yourself. But if you do all your research and you lay out a plan and check it and do several iterations of it to where you're pretty sure this plan is going to work at this location, once implemented, and then go out there and find out that it's not going to work, and
Mhm.
you're going to go through that process anyway. You might
Mhm.
as well knock out half the work beforehand for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
But a lot of those things you cannot know until you get there.
That's what I was going to ask you. Even if you have this extensive research plan, once you go out there, because we experienced that on a smaller dose today, living here, and we're not completely cut off from the grid.
Yeah.
But even here, we create a design, we have a plan, we've done our research, and then we go out there and try to implement it. And then the first iteration fails. And then the second iteration fails, and a third, and a fourth, and finally on the fifth, it happened. So, as much research, research is obviously an important stage to preparation. But even with all of the research, it ensures you a better chance of succeeding. Because if we didn't have that research, we would have gone through maybe 20 iterations before,
Sometimes hundreds.
sometimes hundreds of
Yeah.
iterations.
There's things in my book that are the 90-second iteration of it before I got it right enough to put it in a book and say, "This is actually gonna work."
Wow. That research stage will oftentimes get you far enough to where you can succeed on the fifth iteration as
Yeah.
opposed to the hundredth
Yeah, absolutely.
iteration.
Most times it's less than a dozen
Hmm.
iterations, but it's gonna be a quick wake-up call when you say, "I can go out there and build
Yeah,
a fence or a hydroponic system," and you've never done it before, and it's just gonna be a big wake-up call because 'cause you're
right,
gonna have mistake after mistake after mistake.
right. And we're saying this because we don't want anyone to be discouraged. Hey, I put all this energy into researching, and I go out there and I implement it, and everything failed. It's probably going to fail. Not saying all of the time. Sometimes we get it right on the first iteration. But if you do all this research and you go out there and try to implement it and it doesn't go the way that you want it to go, don't become discouraged.
Just Yeah, just know that it's not gonna go the way you go
Right.
that you want it to go.
But
Just
it
plan
will
for
happen.
that.
Right. Plan for that and it will happen eventually.
Yep.
We'll go deeper into the sort of livestock and crops that you researched in later episodes, but keep in mind those are some other things that you would want to look into. Which livestock would survive best in the terrain that you chose? Which ones will produce the best of whatever it is that you need to produce? Like if you want goats that will produce meat, then look at meat goats. If you want goats that will produce milk, then look at milk goats. Or if you want meat chickens as opposed to egg chickens. So there's a whole variety of research that goes into that stuff.
And even when you research, I want a meat goat, that meat goat might not work in that terrain or that ecosystem or that temperature range.
Right.
So there's a lot of fine tuning and a lot of planning and working out what's best. And the land, going back to scouting land, the land is the start of all of that. So you have to find the land that you're going to be in first and then start working out from there.
Right. Yeah, but we'll go a little bit more into livestock and crops in a different episode. But the research stage is definitely important when you are looking to prepare and leave society.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once you're done with those steps, though, so you've made a plan, you've acquired the skills, you've saved up enough, and you've done your research, the next step is probably the step that everyone is most excited for, which is quitting.
Pulling the trigger.
Woo! We are quitting society.
Yeah, that was that was a huge leap. And that takes a lot of guts just in itself.
It's scary. You're leaving your entire life behind.
Yeah. It's not just walking into your office and saying, I quit, which is scary in itself.
That is scary.
Like, what am I going to do for money now? How are we going
Yeah.
to eat? If you have kids, how am I going to feed the kids? So to add on to that, I quit my job. I quit society. I quit everything I've ever known and learned and everything I know, and I'm leaving.
Yeah, it's a mentality shift. Like you said, everything you've ever learned or know about life, you have to quit that mentality also. Yeah, and so when we're referring to quitting, we're not just talking about quitting your job and leaving. We're talking about quitting your social circles, quitting your habits and your routine, quitting any addictions you have,
Quitting
quitting
technology, grocery
technology.
stores, entertainment.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot more that goes into quitting.
If
It feels easy to just say I quit, but it's really not. If you've ever struggled with addiction, it's not easy to just quit something.
and pay no mind, we're addicted to this stuff.
We
We're
are.
addicted to society and we depend on it. And
Yeah.
but that we're going the extreme of what I did.
Oh, yeah,
Anywhere
absolutely.
in between that is going to be, you don't have to quit grocery stores. You don't have to quit
Yeah.
your internet or
Yeah, when I left California, I had to quit a few things, not as extensive as Dan did or as dramatic. Like Dan quit contact with everyone. His mom, his dad, his sister, his friends, everyone. So for me, I'm still in contact with my family, but I did have to quit thinking that I can just always run back to them every single time I needed to, because before I left California, I was only a few hours away. So if something happened, I can just say, well, I'm going back home and I'm going to be there for a little bit.
yeah.
So, and I am hundreds of miles away from them now. So I have to quit that mentality of I can always run back to them. And something else I had to quit was the gym. I know it sounds very insignificant, but it was such a huge part of my identity. I was a total gym rat. I would go to the gym 3 hours a day, 2 times a day. And I was very addicted to the gym. So when I came here and we live miles and miles away from the closest gym, it was sort of hard for me to see all of that progress that I thought I was making go away, or that I didn't have that routine in my life anymore. So it can be something as simple as that. It doesn't have to be as drastic as quitting everything.
And even though you're quitting those things in society, it doesn't mean that you can't have those things outside of society. There's no rule or law that says when I quit society, I'm not going to have electricity anymore. I'm
Mm,
not going to have a refrigerator anymore. I'm not going to have a TV anymore. I'm not going to have a Nintendo Switch anymore. I'm not going to have a gym anymore.
mhm,
You can have a gym in your place. You can take your TV and your Nintendo Switch. And if you like playing frisbee golf, you can set up a frisbee golf course on your property. But the difference is you have to do all those things yourself,
yeah,
whereas society is doing all those things for you now.
yeah.
And that's the key. Also, there's a level of quitting. We quit literally day and night. So one day I was completely immersed in society, working my job. Literally within a day or two later, we were out on the property.
Wow.
And you can have a little bit more of a taper off.
Yeah.
So, like, start with, I'm gonna quit, going to the grocery store, and I'm gonna grow all my own food myself. And then I'm gonna quit the electrical grid and just have solar panels. And then I'm gonna quit shopping and, buying things. And then I'm gonna quit my job and
Right,
just have, my own income, do my own thing, and
right.
slowly taper off of it, I think is
It's a little healthier for you because I sort of did what you did. It was just a sudden, all right, well, I'm leaving now, you know? And I didn't have that quitting mentality or that phase where I slowly started to taper myself off. And it was hard. I went through a lot of withdrawals while the first year, I think, when I was here. I went through a lot of withdrawals, like battling with my mentality about leaving all of this stuff, leaving my life behind. It became the voice in my mind was very loud about returning back to the life that I left behind before. So I wish I would have tapered off a little bit more as opposed to just, I'm gone.
Yeah, but there's a you can get trapped in that too, though.
You can, yeah.
Like, I plan on tapering off. I'm just going to start growing my own food, and I'm gonna quit going to the grocery store. But then 2 years later, you find you're growing your own food, but find you're still going to the grocery store.
Yeah, that's so true.
So, if you don't pull that trigger, then it can be a trap too.
Mhm.
And on the other s you kinda touched on something that was, important too, is that the more you're in society, the harder it is to leave society
Mhm.
on 2 aspects. If you live in a city, let's say New York City or something, that you are fully merged in one of the biggest cities of society in the world, as opposed to if you live on your dad's farm in Oklahoma, you've kind of known this your whole life. So separating from the city and society isn't that big of a deal. As opposed to this guy in New York City leaving society would be huge.
Yeah.
Then there's a time value too. So the longer you're in society, the harder it is to leave. If
Mhm.
I'm 15, 16 years old and my parents say, "Oh, we're leaving society," it's not that big of a shock.
Mhm.
I can adjust pretty quick. But if I'm 60 years old and I've worked in the industry for 40 years and I quit my job and leave, there is this feeling inside you that you have to be doing something. I have to be working.
Mm.
And you'll often find that people that retire get a second job,
Mhm.
even though they don't have to financially, they're set up for life. And this is what they've been working for 40 years,
Mhm.
is to not have to work anymore. And I mean, I'd say 80% of retirees go and get another job just
Mhm.
because it is pre-programmed in them so hard that they have to be doing something every day. They have to be
Yeah.
doing something. And when you just sit back and say, I don't need to do anything anymore, it, if there's a battle going on.
Right.
So for the first, like I said, the longer you're in it, the longer that time is. For the first 6, 8, 9 months, I felt like I needed to be doing something.
Yeah. That's funny. That's around the same time. Maybe there's like a maybe there's some scientific
Yeah.
research behind,
Psychological.
yeah, how long it takes. I'm sure there is, because we're creatures of habits, and people have studied our habit over decades and decades. So I'm sure there's a time interval there that we need. Because I didn't start fully accepting the self-sufficiency life until about a year, maybe a year and a few months in. So maybe more like 14 months or so before I was like, this is my life now, and I feel comfortable in this life, and this is how it's gonna be. I accept it. But before that, that year and few months, it was constant battles going on in my brain about, I need to be back in the rat race. I need a hustle. I'm not setting myself up for that American dream of retiring and not working and whatnot. So it took me a while before I accepted where I am at. And during that year and couple of months, I could have very easily left. And that's what a lot of people do. They are out there for 6 months and they're battling with themselves over and over again. And eventually, that voice that says, go back, that one wins. So,
It's important to plan that into your blueprints and your plan, is that the first year I'm out there, I'm gonna wanna go back.
yeah.
And I just have to push myself to say, just give it 13 months,
Yeah.
or give it 16 months or something, and to see if that feeling sticks around then.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, then it wasn't real to begin with.
Right.
But if, after 16 months, 2 years out there, you say, "This isn't for me," then you can start listening to yourself.
Yeah. Then you can definitely pull the plug or replug, I guess, not pull the plug, but
Yeah.
put the plug back into the outlet and return to your
Cy
life before.
Cipher back in.
Yeah. Exactly, exactly. But after that allotted amount of time and you feel comfortable and you accept things the way that they are now, I think it's pretty safe to say that you'll be okay from there on out. That voice will sort of go away. So you retired at the age of 25? Like from job,
28, I think.
28. Okay. From your job, you retired at the age of 28.
Mhm.
Okay. And how was that for you? Retiring at such a young age, did it scare you?
You know, I think that I never really planned on first of all, I don't think I ever planned on living to be 80. But I don't think I ever planned on working until I was 65.
Mm,
And that's kind of why I hustled so hard in the beginning,
mhm,
is I thought if I can make a couple $1,000,000 before I'm 30, I can chillax and not do anything the rest of my life, live off
mhm.
that money. So when we thought, hey, what if we just leave society? Then we don't have to we don't need any money.
Oh, okay.
Um, it was kind of an easy choice. It just kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Do you think that was a product of your time though? Nowadays, it's hard to think that a 28-year-old, I'm almost 28, and I'm nowhere close to being able to retire because of how our economics are, because of how our politics and society, all that stuff really plays into the retiring opportunity. So, do you think because you retired in the late 90s? Was that when you
Hmm.
retired?
Yeah.
And that the late 90s was a different world, different time. Do you think that was a product of your time?
Yeah. I think that as you get further and further away from cavemen, you get further away from being self-sufficient.
Mhm.
So, and we see it every day. The new generations are completely dependent, which is the opposite of self-sufficient
Yeah.
on everything that society has to
That's
offer.
me.
Yeah. So, I mean, they have DoorDash, bring in the food.
Yeah.
They don't have to drive. Somebody drives them around.
Instant gratification, that's what we want.
Yeah. Fast news, fast media,
Yes.
fast. And then not only that, but you don't even have to think for yourself.
No.
Like somebody tells you what you should eat. You go to the grocery store and there's little arrows telling you where to park, little lines telling you to park here, little signs that says,
Yeah.
you park here. You go in the grocery store, the doors open automatically for you.
Yeah.
You don't even have to open the door. All the signs are this is where the food is. You don't have to look for it. You
Mhm.
bring it up. You don't even have to add it up. The lady adds it up for you. She doesn't even add it up.
The
The things,
computer.
yeah, she scans it and she doesn't have to do anything. They bag it for you. They put it in the car for you. You don't have to do anything anymore.
No.
As opposed to 100 years ago or 200 years ago, it was far the other way. There was no doors that automatically opened. There was no cars that drove you around. And as we go further and further back, it was easier and easier for those people to be self-sufficient.
Mm.
And as we go further and further this way, it's harder and harder. Like my dad's generation, my grandpa's generation, I think it was very easy for them to leave society. My generation, it was a little harder. We had pagers. We didn't have cell phones, but we had
Mhm.
pagers and we had cars and we had air conditioning. And so I think my generation was probably one of the last generations that it was not a fight to leave society.
Mhm.
And now it's going to be a fight, inner fight and outside fight.
Oh, man.
It's going to be harder in a lot of ways. But on the other side of that, it's a lot easier in a lot of ways. My grandparents didn't have wind turbines and solar panels. So they didn't have electricity and air conditioning. We had solar panels, wind turbines. We had blenders that blended us up margaritas from fruit and alcohol that we made right there on the homestead.
Yeah, and you also didn't have the educational material that taught you how to do these things.
Right. You have all that now.
Yeah, like you have us.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
podcasts out there, there's books, there's YouTube videos that we can easily access, as opposed to you and your dad, your generations. You guys sort of had to just
Rough
figure
it.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, figure it out. So, so speaking about generations and age and whatnot, do you think we kind of touched on this a little bit, like 10 minutes ago or so? But do you think there is an age limit for off-grid living? Maybe if you're in your 70s or 80s, it would be near impossible to do it.
I
Like
mean,
this is a young man's game.
I've seen some 70 and 80-year-olds that are fit and can do anything and do anything. They're out
Mhm.
there climbing Everest, literally,
Mhm.
and they're traveling the world going through the Amazon. And so there's definitely some exceptions to the rule. But I think that I wouldn't say it's a young man's game because 18, 19, 20, 21. you wouldn't have the knowledge built, yes, or the experience built. So I'd say late 20s, 30s,
That's
is
like
optimal.
prime. Okay.
Yeah, you've set if you start when you're 18, 19, 20, start setting up all these and
Mm.
researching all these things, and you're ready to go I'm not saying start at 30,
Oh,
because then you're gonna be 40, 50 out there.
yeah.
But if you have everything ready by the time you're in your late 20s, early 30s,
Right.
I think that's the optimal time to go. And physically, you're more fit. I mean,
Yeah.
I have more muscle when I was 28 and 30 than when I was 18.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I agree with that point. So you're saying it's not impossible. Will it be harder in your 70s and your 80s?
Absolutely. I
Okay.
mean, everything out there is physical.
Yeah.
There's nothing out there that's not physical.
Uh-huh.
Even setting up some of the automatic systems that remove the physicality element from it are physical
Right.
to set them up.
Right.
So you can't hire a mechanic to come out and fix your truck. You can't hire an electrician to come out and install your electrical boxes.
Right.
Every second of every day is a fight. It's an effort
Right.
until you can set all those things up to where it's a lot easier.
Right.
I worked harder being out retiring than I did not retiring. I had a physically easier life working than I did when I retire.
Mhm.
As you get older, it's gonna become harder and harder.
Right, but it's not impossible. We're not trying to
No.
discourage if you're in your 70s or 80s, by no means is it impossible. But you want to, again, calculate that into your plan. It will be hard for you to lift certain things or for you to pull certain things. So maybe recruit your grandchildren.
Yeah, and there's other options like commune and
Yes.
intentional communities.
Absolutely, which is actually what we're gonna go into pretty soon. We will have an episode about setting up systems. I know that once you actually left society, you were still in the preparation stage for about a year and a half, 2 years or so. And that preparation stage is more setting up systems and establishing your land so that you can be completely all your systems will be sustainable and it'll make things a lot easier for you. So we'll have an episode specifically about establishing systems and what that does and what that means. So other options. You're starting to get into that. So like communes, what else? What else is out there?
Communes, we looked into just getting a boat, a sailboat or something, and just sailing around the ocean, around the planet. You can be completely self-sufficient on a sailboat.
What?
They have their own electrical systems, they have wind turbines, they have,
Wow.
um yeah, and it's just a little mini house, kinda like a water camper or water RV,
Wow. You
and,
can grow food and
grow your food and,
fish and
fish, and you're not using any gasoline, you're just the wind is blowing you around the planet. The
wow.
transportation's free.
That's cool.
Or you could port in somewhere and plug in and just live in your boat, though, so you're not paying rent but you're still getting groceries and
Yeah.
just live in a port.
Mm.
There's some places like in Northern California and Oregon, around Portland, Washington, Alaska, that you can actually anchor your boat and kinda live like a homeless person. So, like, you know how in, like, Sacramento and place you can live on public lands
Yeah.
and they don't really kick you out,
Right,
or they do
right.
and you come back,
Yeah,
you
there's
know?
a huge homeless population in California, but the West Coast too. It goes all up the West
Right.
Coast.
So, but you're allowed pretty much, especially in California, you are actually allowed to sleep
Yeah,
in a park or
yeah.
anywhere you want. You can live there.
You'll be protected by the law,
Yeah,
definitely.
and a lot of these homeless people, aren't actually homeless. They're like students or they have jobs. It's just that they don't wanna pay rent, or rent in California is way too
Yeah, it's
expensive,
so expensive.
and they choose to live this way. I mean, they're wearing the nice shirts and the new shoes and brand
That's
name
true.
clothes and got the phone and probably even have a car,
That's true.
and,
Yeah, in my college, there's a documentary about that on YouTube. It's called Humboldt State's homeless student population or something. And it talks about the homeless students who are attending school but cannot afford rent. they don't have enough dormitories to house these students. And these students are living in their cars, living in campers, sharing a van together. And it's all legal, technically, you know.
And then we went to that little town up in
Oh, that was in North Carolina, Asheville.
Asheville,
Yeah.
where it's a college town too.
Yeah, it's a college town.
And there's like, I don't think there's any homeless people in that town at all.
All the yeah.
As a viewer would think of a homeless person,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
but there's people sleeping in the streets and sleeping in tents and stuff. And they're just young kids going to school.
Yeah.
And it's just so much cheaper to sleep in a tent outside. And the weather's nice all year round.
Yeah, and they keep their streets really clean
Yeah.
for everyone, and there's a lot of benches available. And yeah, we saw like the coolest homeless
The
population.
hippies, they were like hipsters.
They were
And
so cool. They had like skateboards and
yeah,
they had a little guitar with
yeah,
them and just super cool. They were wearing like brand name stuff. And then we're like, all right, cool. Well, I'll talk to you later. And then they'll be like, all right, well, I'm gonna go take a nap now. And then he
yeah,
goes and sleeps at the bench,
yeah,
like that was closest to him. And I'm
yeah.
just like, what is going on here?
So that's an option.
Yeah.
But I meant like you could park your sailboat and dock it. I mean, not dock it, but anchor it in some of these rivers or bays. And there's people living out there. There's actually like boat cities where they're all kind of anchored together and tied off to each other. And it's a community of people just living in the San Francisco Bay.
Mm.
There's a big one in the San Francisco Bay. And some of these boats like become derelict and abandoned.
Mm.
And I think it's the fire department or the Coast Guard goes in and pulls these decaying boats off of this little community.
I see.
So yeah, you could just live in a sailboat
Yeah.
and be in Portland or, be in San Francisco and just take your little dinghy into work every day
Yeah.
or just live out there completely.
Obviously, these aren't cheap communities to be a part of. We tried applying for one in Portland, I think. No, it was in Northern California. We tried applying for one in Northern California, and it was we were on a wait list. So we had to wait because obviously a marina, a port, very small, limited,
Spots.
real estate. So we were put onto a wait list, and there was already maybe 50 people on there, but the wait list is a lifetime wait list.
Mhm.
So we have to wait until these people either die,
Mhm.
and these people were maybe in their early
40s.
50s. Yeah,
50s.
exactly. So that means we'd have to wait another maybe 50 years
For one person.
for
to get
one person and for us to move up the spot.
Yeah.
So it is definitely an option.
But
it,
that's in ports. What I'm talking about is almost illegal, is that they're out in the middle of the bay
oh,
or they're out in the middle of the river in Portland.
okay.
And there's no technical law that says you can't, like in a boat, you can go or be in a lake somewhere. Let's say Lake Mead in Nevada.
Yeah.
I have my boat. I put it in the ramp. I go out in the middle of the lake. I can anchor and spend the night there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm spending 2 nights. It's 4th of July weekend. I'm going to spend the weekend out in my boat on Lake Mead. That's the logic behind why you're allowed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But these people live out there in the middle of Lake Mead, or they live out there in the middle of the Portland River.
Okay, I see. We are not legal advisors.
Yeah.
So please do your research. If you need a permit, please get a permit.
Yeah.
Don't
And they
sue us.
they kind of go in there and like get them out, and
Yeah.
then everybody comes back in again.
Gotcha. So there's ways to hack the system, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they don't really do anything to these people. There's some documentaries on that too.
Gotcha. And then we are big on communes. You've built 2 or 3 down in South America and in Vegas. So we're pretty big on, if you just want to sort of feel this out, this lifestyle, we would recommend that you start looking into one of those programs or a commune that will help you get your foot in the door if you want to feel what it feels like.
Yeah, and these aren't communes the way that Hollywood produces
Oh.
it, or the way you've seen it on TV. These aren't like,
It's not a cult.
yeah, it's not a Waco thing.
Yeah.
These are more like hippie communes that get together, but there's not a hippie aspect to it anymore.
Right.
There's not the free love spirit, open sex thing. It's just kind of it's more like a neighborhood, actually. It's a
Yeah.
neighborhood of neighbors and friends, and sometimes friends of family
Right.
that cohabitate together to ease financial burdens, to ease physical burdens, to ease societal burdens.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, I mean, it makes sense because everybody on your block right now owns a lawnmower, and half the people on your block have a in-ground swimming pool, and everybody in our block has a power drill. You know, you don't need 50 swimming pools. You don't need 50 home gyms. You don't need 50 home theaters. When you have 50 people and one home gym, everybody gets a turn on it. And
Mhm.
you have the garden, one garden for everybody. And I have one drill and everybody gets to use it. It's just, you know, it's insane that we all have our own set of these things.
Right.
But Walmart and Home Depot don't want you to know that.
Right.
They don't want you to come together and share, and you don't even need to live together. Like you can just have a tool share program in your neighborhood
Mhm.
where people, you know, go and borrow the lawnmower, go and borrow a hammer. But Home Depot, Walmart says you need to be better than the Joneses. You have to have a better lawnmower than they do. You have to have a better barbecue pit than they do. You have to have a nicer swimming pool than they do. And that's how they become trillionaires. And is because they've taught you that you have to have your own, not only your own set of this, but a better set and a new set every year.
Yeah, that's the capitalist mindset for you. It's
Yeah.
not a very it we don't live in
A healthy,
communal
yeah.
a communal society.
No.
We don't encourage that mentality of community. It's very individualistic and
Consumeristic.
capitalistic. Yeah, exactly. So I would recommend going to intentionalcommunities.org, or I think it's
Yeah.
ic.org. That's a great start if you want to at least familiarize with what these intentional communities are all about. There's people from as little as, we live in an apartment, but we have tools that we want to share. Would you like to be part of this intentional community? Or as far as this is a whole society that they've created.
And we're
And
100% self-sufficient.
yeah, we're completely self-sufficient and we're looking for new members. And if there's a big filtering and vetting system. So it's not just,
We take anybody.
yeah, it's not just we take anybody kind of thing. So if you're worried about, the safety behind it or the Hollywood perception of this being a weird situation, a lot of these communities have very highly vetted systems, and you often go in as a
Visitor.
contributing visitor or whatever.
Mhm.
And you go there and it's sort of like a interning period, a probation period where you're there for a couple of months, see how you like it, see if they like you, and then once you pass that stage, you can then join the commune. Other programs I would recommend that are not necessarily communes, it's called WOLF, Worldwide Organization of Farms, I think. It's more like, oh, what is it called? Like a couch surfing type of deal. You go abroad, it's all over the world. I think it's in 210 countries, and you go,
And just work there.
yeah, you work at someone's farm. That's
Mhm.
it. And there might be other volunteers there. It might be a huge family. It might be even a shared community farm, but you get your hands in the ground, your boots on the
And
ground.
that's a good way to learn these skills that we were talking about,
Right.
is to wolf first
Yeah.
and learn how to farm, learn how to weld, learn how to do auto mechanics.
Yeah, exactly. Something else you can do if you want to learn those skills is become a gopher. Gophers usually exist in just the trades field. So, like hands on tools, trades fields like construction and welding. And what that is it's a position that is not paid. It's more like a volunteering position. And you go in there and you do small tasks in the office or on the field. And over time, these people, you pick up skills over time. Eventually, if you're just looking for a job, this might be a good way to get your foot into the door. Eventually, if they like you and they see that you're picking up and you're a good learner and you're consistent, they will most likely hire you. But if you don't want to get hired, you just go in and ask them, hey, can I be a gopher for you guys?
Do you know why they call them gophers?
Does it have something to do with the animals?
No.
No, it has nothing to do with the gopher animal.
Uh-uh.
I don't know why they call them
It's
gophers.
literal.
What?
It's literal. The
Oh,
name is literal. You get hired into, or you volunteer into this program, and let's say I'm a mechanic.
right.
I need someone to go for things for me, to go for
Oh,
things for me.
go
Yeah,
for.
go for a wrench, go for a socket, go for a wire, go get me a drink, go get me. So the
Oh,
gopher is always going for things for people. And it won't just be one mechanic. Let's say you're in a big auto shop and you got 6 bays and or 12 bays. He's going for things for all these mechanics. So they don't have to get out from underneath this and go for a nut all the time. And like I said, it's a good way to learn what size nuts are. Like I can
yeah.
look at a 5/16 18 thread TPI thread nut and say this is a 5/16 18 TPI thread nut that's galvanized. Or
Yeah.
he says go for an open end 9/16 box wrench,
Yeah.
and I learn what these things are, or needle nose pliers,
Yeah.
or so you learn. It's a great way to learn all these things.
Yeah. I'm his gopher, by the
Yeah, she's my go for.
way.
Or they'll say, hey, hold this for me while I tighten this.
Right. Yeah, and you pick up a lot of skills. Like I've picked up a lot of skills just running to his tool cabinet and then picking it up for understanding what these tools are and then giving it to him. And yeah, if he needs me to, attach something to something very easy that I can do, that's something that I learned how to do that day. So it's definitely something that is sort of not enough people go in there, which makes sense. You go into a job expecting to get paid,
Yeah,
not
especially people now.
right, not expecting to just gain skills.
Yeah.
But that opportunity is out there for you. And then one of the last options I'm assuming is seasteading, which is kind of like living on a sailboat.
Yeah. What we did in the Seasteading Institute was specifically my task was to design the self-sufficiency elements of it. So the hydroponic systems, the aquaponic systems, bee boxes and honey but they had the waste management people and they had photovoltaics people that design that. They had the structural engineers that would design the structure of it. Is it going to be octagons or triangles put together?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, this place just floats out in the middle of international waters and anchored, and people live out there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what we did at Seasteading Institute.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like sailboats, but
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of sailboats together.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually, what we were, one of the options was we were going to buy a decommissioned cruise liner.
Oh.
So like, these big cruise boats that have like, you can put 1,000 people on them.
Yeah, that's actually becoming a more popular thing nowadays.
Really? Cruise liners? Do you all
Yeah.
live on the cruise liner?
Yeah,
Together?
yeah, yeah. In Humboldt County, to accommodate for the population of homeless students, they've they've started a plan in the motions, getting a cruise liner into the ports.
And just pour it there and everybody lives in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
that's crazy that
that's what
it's
we do.
picking up now.
Yeah, we looked into that and just having a cruise liner anchored out there. And
Wow.
you don't have to build anything.
No.
You have all your rooms, you have your kitchen facility, you have your indoor gym, you have
Yeah.
a swimming pool, you have a movie theater, and that was another option. Another option that is starting to also gain traction is the van life.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, get a van, deck it out with a bed and
Yeah.
tables, a microwave and sink and
That's huge now.
septic tank, and just travel around,
Yeah.
especially an electric van where you don't have to pay for the gas.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're all but free.
That's a
Uh,
huge, huge niche that my generation has started to populate. But it yeah, go ahead.
Younger.
Oh, yeah, but the van life is definitely something that's a little bit, I think, glamorized with all of the social media influencers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to live in a tiny little space like
Yeah, it is hard.
here.
But it's definitely an option, and obviously a lot of people are doing it. I would almost even suggest being part of a church. I was a part of a church growing up. Some people call it a cult. It was a pretty hardcore church. I,
Yeah, it's pretty much a cult.
people always say that. It's
Yeah.
weird because I never considered it a cult. But then once I start explaining it to other people, like you and my roommates and my friends, they're like, Julia, you were part of a cult.
Yeah. Well, cult people inside of a cult they don't call themselves cult
No,
members.
we don't. Yeah, exactly. We don't. I never saw it as a cult.
Yeah.
It's only when other people look at it from the outside, they're like, yeah, that was a cult.
Or you could join a cult.
Or
That's
that,
another option. And
hey,
you can,
apparently I was a part of a
yeah,
cult.
you can worship Steve,
Like,
the cult leader, and everything is great.
oh God.
Yes.
Yeah, but my church cult, I'm just gonna call it a church because
Yeah, there's no reason to disrespect
yeah,
them.
they were. I didn't come out of it with any traumas or anything, so and for a lot of it, it was very beneficial for me, and I'm still in contact with a lot of those people, and they are very near and dear to me. So I'm not gonna call them a cult.
Cult, I mean, it's just like everything else. Cults get a bad name.
Yeah,
Literally, they're called cults. But 90% of these cults out there are harmless, and
yeah,
they're just they have a different belief system than your mainstream Christians or something.
yeah,
But I'm sure lots of people around the world look at these mainstream hardcore Christians, especially down here in the Bible Belt. They're like, you guys are a
yeah.
bunch
You
of
guys are
cults.
cults. Yeah,
So
exactly. But they weren't necessarily off grid or self sufficient. That community I was a part of, but they had a very strong sense of community, and they had their own society going within the normal society. They had an organization, and there were people who filled those positions. So it's definitely something that if you want to get that sense of community, joining a church, even if you're not religious, is a good way to sort of
yeah,
immerse yourself in that. And my family was also very attached to their traditional roots. My culture is a farmer's culture, and my parents were rice farmer, and my parents' parents were rice farmers. They lived in the hills of Laos and Vietnam, and they were very in touch with nature and understanding how things outside of normal modern society worked. So if you can just even get yourself into it's called enclaves. It's a cultural neighborhood inside of a modern neighborhood. And that was sort of we had a lot of those in Sacramento. There would be a neighborhood that was geared towards my culture, and they almost ran that neighborhood like a little village. And you'll find that there's a lot like there's a big Jewish neighborhood in New York, and they're very like traditional. And there's Amish neighborhoods
mhm,
and communities in Midwest, and so there's if you want to get into that, but you don't want to move to Nebraska to join a community or move to Northern California to be part of a marina port or whatever. Go look within your own neighborhood. You know, you never know what you can find. There's a lot of cultures that have created their own society in your own neighborhood. So
yeah. You don't have to even move out of your neighborhood.
yeah, you don't have to move out. You can join the community garden and you can sort of just learn what it feels like to live outside of society. So there's a lot of options for you guys.
Another, I think I just remembered another option, and all these options are in my book, plus more. But the RV, living in an RV, just
Oh,
living in
an
a
RV
camper.
neighborhood?
No, just a camper. Living in a
Oh,
camper, your RV, and you buy a year long or a lifetime national parks membership,
mm,
and you go and park your RV in a national park. Let's say Flaming Gorge. And sometimes there's the maximum time limits that you have to stay in these places, like 30 days or 90 days or something.
right.
But all you have to do is go out and come back in, or go to another national park and then come back in, or go to another national park and then another one, and just kind of stay in all these national parks. And it's cheap, or if you're a vet, it's completely free.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so throw a couple solar panels on top of your RV. RVs, not to maybe we don't notice this, but our recreational vehicles were the original mini house? So it was called
Tiny
tiny
houses?
houses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you look at a tiny house and then you look at some of the original RVs, the pictures
Oh.
are identical.
Oh,
They literally like made little houses on these trailers and they called them RVs. That was like in the 1930s and
oh,
20s
wow.
and stuff. So it's gone a long way and RVs have become very lightweight. They have 12-volt systems in them. And so if you take the tiny house and give it 100 years, it'll turn into the RV.
Mhm.
So it's like you aren't inventing this. It was already invented.
Mhm.
So yeah, RV life, living in an RV in different national parks, which is beautiful scenery.
Yeah.
Wake up every morning and you look at the Grand Canyon. So yeah, that's another option.
Yeah.
Lots of options.
Yeah, yeah. There's lots of options out there for you guys. So if you want to just sort of, get a taste of what it feels like to live outside of society, there's a lot of options out there for you guys. So let's recap today's episode. So what you have to do to prepare yourself to leave society or become more self-sufficient, whatever it is that you want to do. Make a plan, rough
Make
outline of your needs and your wants and how you plan on achieving it. Then you want to acquire skills, volunteer, take classes, read books, YouTube videos, listen to podcasts, whatever.
finances.
Right. And then there's finances. So you start with your saving and your budgeting. Sell your stuff, or in Dan's case, burn all of your stuff.
Burn it.
Yes, burn them in a fire. That is a must.
Mhm.
And then number 4, do your research, lab research, field research, whatever it is. Go scout your land, make a trip there, research different kinds of terrains, livestock, crops, whatever it is that you need to do. And then
And then we get to quit.
yes, and then we get to quit. Quit, quit, quit.
That's the icing on the cake. That's what we're going for here.
Right,
That's the whole point behind all this is to quit.
right, exactly. And so, yeah, those are the preparation stages pretty much to the point right before you leave society. And obviously, the other options and stuff, they can come before or after. And all of these steps are sort of, like you're saying, they kind of overlap themselves.
Hmm.
And the preparation stage may take months to even years to
Hmm.
prepare to leave. So if you have thought about this stuff, I would suggest at least making your plan a rough outline today or as soon as you can.
Yeah. And there's a lot of elements here that we haven't touched on just because they didn't affect me. I outlined some of them in my book, but there's other things that you might have to prepare for and put into your list, like learn about homeschooling your children,
Oh,
because now you are the teacher and what activities they need to be so that you keep them physically healthy and what preparations you need to make for your pets, your religion, a lot of things that didn't affect me and I didn't have to deal with.
right.
You guys will have to deal with.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So again, this is just what Dan did. These are the steps that Dan took. And obviously you can take them and adjust them to your unique circumstances. But yeah, any final thoughts?
If this is interesting to you and if you've been toying with this idea for a while, do it. Just go for it. Do the steps and be smart about it. But a lot of us think that we can't do that. Uh,
Mm,
all those people can do that, but I could never do that.
yeah.
The thing is, those people are you, and you're those people. You're the same people.
Yeah.
You know, people have been doing this for hundreds of thousands of years. They've been self-sufficient. There's no reason why you can't do what everybody else can do,
Right. Exactly.
unless there's a physical reason that you
Right.
can't do it. At which case you might have to rethink it.
Yeah.
Like if you're like maybe handicapped and stuck to a wheelchair, but I would argue that even they can do it.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
they can do anything we can do.
Absolutely. I agree.
So yeah, do it. That's my final thought.
You heard it here first. Do it. So thank you guys so much for tuning in for this 2-part episode. If you haven't seen the first part, go watch the first part. And next week's episode, we have a very special guest. Woo! Drum roll. It's gonna be Dan's mom. So we will explore the side of the story that often isn't heard of. We focus a lot on the person leaving society, but we don't ever talk about the people that they leave behind. So next week will be a very interesting and eye-opening episode for everyone.
Hearing her view of it, her side of the story.
Exactly. Exactly.
So check it out. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. Be sure to pick up a copy of my book, Breaking the Grid, at familist.com, link below. And of course, please like, subscribe, and share.